This is the C Space Studio here at CES 2023. I'm James Kotecki, joined by a woman making her triumphant return to the C Space Studio, CEO of Ampersand, Nicolle Pangis. Thanks so much for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, James.
So you and I have talked, is this your third time with us, or second or third time?
I think it's my third time.
I have a sense of what you do and what Ampersand is, but can you just remind folks, can you level set for us, what does the brand mean at the beginning of 2023 here?
Of course. Well, Ampersand is it's a television advertising company. We're a joint venture owned by Comcast, Cox, and Charter. And historically, our company sold national spot and television, which basically means multi-market local television advertising. When I joined almost 5 years ago now, we moved into more advanced television, so using data for better targeting of television advertising, hopefully to make the consumer experience in television more effective and efficient.
So you've been undergoing this change in the company. There was a rebranding the entire name of the company at one point.
That's right.
And so now here, 5 years in, what are your priorities as you look into 2023? What do you still need to do are you still on the journey? What is your next step here?
Yeah, I think the strategy since I joined really remains unchanged. I'm a big believer, I always talk about evolution versus revolution. The idea of, a lot more data in television, better targeting, better consumer experience is certainly a moonshot. There's a lot of steps that we need to take to get there. Distribution of the cable operators moving from linear to digital, for example, is one piece of the puzzle. Leveraging all the insights that we have access to, pulling them together in interface is another one. Educating the marketplace on a whole new way to buy television differently than they've been buying for the last literally 50 years is another one. So we're on a journey. The strategy remains unchanged, and certainly early data in advanced television shows that we are on the right path, certainly. And
is that education piece still ongoing? And is it harder in a sense, because in some ways, the people who are most eager to be educated and learn new ways of doing things, presumably they're already getting on board. And so maybe now do you have to educate folks who are a little bit more challenging?
1,000%. Change is hard. It is an overused phrase, certainly, but it has the benefit of being true. The buyers of advertising, not just in television, but just generally agencies, brands, are all going through their own transformations in a transformative time in the advertising industry, in a transformative time in the world. So there's a lot of transformation going on, and we're just one piece of a very large puzzle trying to do kind of our part of it.
It's hard to get a handle on it when you look at the macro sense, but if you were to advise an individual how to approach this, it's someone who is maybe willing to make the change but just hasn't done so yet, where do you tell them to start?
Yeah, so a lot of it is, a lot of what we do is around just consultation with brands and agencies. What are the biggest problems? It sounds so cliche, but what are your biggest problems? And to the extent that we can help a brand or an agency on behalf of their brand solve for those problems, even just one at a time, that is progress. And that's what I mean by evolution. It's impossible to kind of take the way you've done something for decades and just kind of say like, okay, we're going to do it like this tomorrow. That's not the way the world works, even though we'd like to think that way. So that's a lot of what we do, solve pieces of sort of the larger puzzle. Is there a specific example of a campaign or a piece of advertising that represents something going right that you can think of? Yeah, there's a lot. In television, there's a lot of discussion within the television advertising world of streaming having a very high, if you watch any streaming service, there's a high frequency of the same advertisement over and over and over again, and it's really sort of a bugaboo of a lot of folks. But the truth is that within all of television, because we have access to a lot of insights because of the distribution we represent, the truth is that is actually across all of the television ecosystem. So we really have a lot of wood to chop. So just an example, to your point, is we go to a brand or an agency and say, hey, based on the television that you're buying today, you're trying to reach this certain demographic, these certain characteristics of people, but actually, based on the data, here's what you're actually doing. But here's a way that you can start moving toward what your actual goal is, and we can implement that for you and help. So it's a much lighter lift when you're not trying to boil the ocean to say, on this campaign, you could have performed 25% better, gotten 25% more efficacy of the campaign based on the audience you wanted to target if you simply did it this way. And we kind of give them the playbook, And that's like a nice way to start segueing into this different way of buying.
And does it turn out that that's a better consumer experience as well? Because I'm wondering, if I hear an ad a million times, sure, I'm annoyed by it. I may even vow that I'll never buy that product. However, maybe there's something in my subconscious where it's actually a good idea for the advertiser to annoy me even though I hate it as a consumer. So are the consumer's incentives and the advertiser's incentives actually aligned here?
Yeah, so the answer is they should be. And to your point, there is value in a certain amount of frequency, but there is diminishing value in over-frequency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And finding that line is some combination of art and science, and that's really sort of at the forefront of what we do, sort of that intersection of art and science. And the good news is we sort of have both in what we do, because we have the science because of the data, and then we work creatively with the brands to say, like, how has the impact worked on these underexposed audiences versus overexposed? And there's brand impact metric companies that we work with that actually show that, the art part of it, like what resonated, what didn't, when did you start angering your consumer? You can actually find that out now.
Head on, applied directly to the forehead. I still remember that commercial all these years later, and I'm still annoyed by it, and I don't think I ever bought the product. We're here at CES where new devices and platforms are coming out all the time, and those are the things that actually change the way that people consume this content and consume this advertising. Yeah. Are there certain technological trends that you're looking at the horizon about ways that you may be playing in the future?
Yeah, well, the hardware part for us, we're very neutral to the hardware, because for us it's about finding consumer wherever they're actually consuming the content that we represent. So the hardware part is fascinating, certainly, but really it's the distribution that matters to us the most. Distribution on any device that can be accessed for premium video. What I'm really excited about is there's an intersection within the advertising space around retail media now, retail data, CPG companies, retailers, really moving into television and trying to figure out ways, to our earlier discussion about consumer experience, how do we make the consumer experience in television much more engaging and authentic? And the truth is, if we provide a good consumer experience on television, ads will not be frustrating to consumers. Right. So I do think we're at just the start of a journey now that television is becoming more digital-like to really make the consumer experience truly beneficial to the consumer, or will they actually feel that way as well.
And do you look at ways to connect their experience watching something on television with then they go into the store or then they go onto the website and they have that kind of connected, seamless experience where they're seeing the ads follow them in a polite way?
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's right. And obviously the world from a privacy perspective is moving very, very quickly as well. Consumer privacy, you might have seen the legislation in Europe the case that just got put down, I think it was last week. So there's a lot moving in privacy across the globe, but certainly in the United States. I think that's actually a really good thing for consumers, because I think brands will have to be very thoughtful about how they leverage their relationship with their consumers to provide an exceptional experience, because opt-outs are becoming, opt-ins are becoming sort of the norm, not the exception, and so there's so much moving in the privacy world. And I think actually, for the advertising industry, but certainly as a consumer as well, with my other hat, I think the combination of all the things happening in this space, in 5 years from now, I think we're going to be in a very different and better world around advertising and targeting to the consumers.
Because it's based on a more permission-based relationship.
Correct. Yes, and to that extent, it will be more relevant. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think about the experience of watching TV in the metaverse, whatever that means? Do you think about that term?
I'm gonna sound like I'm not. I feel like I try to lean in on new technology, but I do think the metaverse. There's a lot there. I think there is a place for the metaverse. I think there's a lot more talk than actually what's.
Some of it right here in the C Space Studio.
Yeah. And so I'm not saying that there's nothing, there will be something in the metaverse. I think the amount of investment that just suddenly pivoted into it, I find fascinating, because I think, we have to understand what are we trying to solve? Like, how are we going to make the world better? How are we going to make consumer experiences better? And I feel like we're going to the solution before actually figuring out what we're trying to solve for. It's certainly not my expertise, but just kind of somebody in the advertising space and somebody who kind of follows it. I'm just intrigued by what that is going to look like. It is intriguing. A lot of different answers about the metaverse here in the C Space Studio. It's been interesting. What do you think? To me, it's like the new crypto in a way. Like there's a lot of discussion about crypto a few years ago, and that sort of played out. So we'll see. Exactly. Yeah. Something that you believe? Is there something that you believe technology won't change in the next 10 years in your business? I do. I mean, just coming to CES after a couple of years of not coming to CES before the pandemic, I think, despite the narrative of we could do everything through computer screens, I think, shows like CES, the importance of and the value of having in-person collaboration and communication is not going to go away, period, end of story. I think people in the end need to physically be with other people. Although you could argue at CES you might be around people too much during the day. But I don't think that that's going to change in our world or in our business. I think in-person collaboration and communication is going to not change. Technology is going to change the way we communicate through text and other things, but I think from a business perspective, in-person is always going to be the ruling factor of relationships. You're a Girl Scout leader to your daughters, I believe. I am, yes. And any similarities between that job and this one? Well, there's more arts and crafts in the Girl Scout troop. Look, I think, of course there are, right? Because, if you're leading anything, you want to try to lead by example and just kind of show what I'm a big believer. It's like you act the way you want the world to look like, sort of outside of you. I do the Girl Scout thing for very selfish reasons, which is it's a good way to sort of feed my own soul. I was a Girl Scout myself, and I do think teaching the next generation about giving back to society is critical and probably undervalued now in a way that it probably wasn't when we were growing up. And sometimes maybe running a meeting in the business world requires some of those Girl Scout attention tactics. Just to kind of get people's attention, focus on this. Including cookies. Yes. Cookies go into Girl Scouts, cookies go into business meetings. Cookies will solve it. And cookies go into privacy discussions in the technology world as well. Nicolle Pangis, CEO Ampersand, thanks for coming back to the C Space Studio. Thanks for having me. And thank you so much for watching. This is CES 2023. We are live here in the C Space Studio for the rest of the day. I'll be talking to more leaders. Don't go anywhere. I'm James Kotecki. Thanks a lot.